what do you think is the biggest flaw when it comes to the justice system?
Rich people get justice, people without money don't.
Across the United States, jails and prisons with their cramped quarters and communal living have become hotbeds for the spread of the coronavirus. It has prompted local governments to take the unprecedented step of releasing thousands of inmates and raising the fraught question of who is let out and who remains in custody. The rap world has been focused on this topic because of Tekashi 6ix9ine and YNW Melly, but this issue is much bigger than that for thousands of inmates who are locked up on outdated cannabis convictions. Corvain Cooper is serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole because of the 3 strikes mandate in California. Mind you, some of the felonies he was charged with aren't even felonies anymore.
This call is from a federal prison.
My name is Corvain Cooper. I'm currently incarcerated for marijuana distribution. When I was found guilty of life imprisonment for marijuana, it just blew my mind, coming from California, knowing the marijuana laws and knowing when you're driving down the street, my kids are on their way to school and they can stop at a hemp store before they can stop at an actual liquor store. And I got all my prior convictions are taken off my jacket. So if I was arrested today, I would have no priors. I would be just like a new person that was just getting into the system today. So I have no longer priors. With the 2 priors that I had, it's kind of like in the federal system, it's called an 851. And that's how you end up getting a life sentence if you do 3 of the same crimes. I mean, it's sad to the point where it's weed that's grown out of the ground that helps people with cancer and helps people more than it hurts. It has not hurt anybody, but yet they can throw away the key and throw you away for the rest of your life for something that you can make movies out of it. It's on all the movies, and everybody can laugh and giggle of something about something that you're sitting on the bunk for.
Corvain, who organized these sales, and basically they were buying cannabis in California and shipping it to North Carolina. And he received a sentence of life without parole that was largely conditioned on 2 previous convictions he had in the state of California. Since he was convicted on those charges, they have been downgraded, and those charges aren't even eligible for 3 strikes anymore.
Steve DeAngelo is chairman emeritus of Harborside Incorporated, a publicly traded cannabis company and the founder of the activist group Last Prisoner Project.
I spent 30 plus years in the underground cannabis market. If my skin was a different color, I would probably almost certainly either be dead or I would be in prison right now myself. So there are 40,000 plus people in prison in the United States alone on cannabis charges.
Right.
50 of them plus are there for life without parole. Life without parole because they grew some cannabis or smuggled some cannabis or helped repair cars that were used for smuggling cannabis. And they will die there if we don't get them out. They will die in prison.
It's crazy how, these groups of people who've continuously been marginalized by the country that they live in continue to get marginalized when the business aspect comes into it. And then if you look at the criminal justice system, you mentioned earlier that over 40,000 non-violent convictions of marijuana are currently in the prison system now. Why aren't these inmates being released if weed is legal now and their crimes are non-violent? What's the delay?
Getting anybody released from prison is really challenging. And of course, it's complicated now, and really most places around the world, because the people who are typically locked up on cannabis charges are people who don't have the influence or the money to get out of those charges. And so that lack of power makes it even more difficult. And it's that same disparity that you find in the business side, right? So in the early days of legal cannabis, people of color, for the most part, were not willing to step out of the shadows because they knew that if they did, they were way more likely to get smacked down than I was. And in fact, if you look at the history of enforcement during the period of medical cannabis in California, people of color were targeted and were convicted and sentenced disproportionately. So they were right? People of color were right to say, hey, legal cannabis, all right, let me step back a little bit and see how this thing plays out before I stick my neck out, right?
One entrepreneur who has is respected former NBA veteran Al Harrington. Harrington has embarked on what may be his most lucrative venture yet with his cannabis company, Viola. Harrington is part of the new school of cannabis executives trying to use his privilege to change the tide on legalization. Al, taking things back to your childhood and growing up in Orange, New Jersey, what was the experience like for you seeing the war on drugs movement?
Man, it was it was crazy. I mean, in 8th grade, I remember 2 kids in my class getting locked up for having nickel bags of weed in their locker. Fiends being, down the alley and people telling me that, the war on drugs and it was cannabis that got them there. You know what I'm saying? So I was afraid of it, and then stop and frisk too. So in my neighborhood, nobody had crack really. They only had weed, so just, we standing on the corner and the police come and throw the older kids up against the wall, and sometimes they let us run off. But you know what I'm saying? So, I was afraid of it, bro. I was definitely afraid of it. But I just I think just growing up with that stigma heavy on you your whole life, and just people telling you that it's a gateway drug and all these different things, it was just hard to shake it, and I always say that's the reason why I go so hard being an advocate now of trying to change the stigma and trying to humanize the plant, because after being lied to for so long, you got to think about it. Cannabis has been outlawed, since the 1930s. And obviously, it was always policed in Black communities. So being that I'm Black and I'm from a Black community, there was just no way in the world for you to find anything positive affiliated with the plant, especially when you used to see people getting locked up for it as well.
The reason that cannabis was made illegal in the first place in this country didn't have anything to do with the plant itself or science or real risk or anything. It had to do with the color of the skin of the people who brought cannabis to the United States. Cannabis came to North America through 2 vectors. One was through Mexican refugees who were fleeing the Mexican Revolution. They came across the southwestern border around 1910, 1911, 1912. And the other vector by which cannabis came to the United States was Afro-Caribbean sailors coming in from places like Trinidad and Jamaica to ports like New York and New Orleans. Jazz venues were the only places that white people and Black people could get together and socialize. Everything else was segregated. And it was there that cannabis jumped from the hands of Black people and brown people into the hands of white people and began its march into the mainstream of American life. The original laws against cannabis were passed in 1911 and 1912, and I've gone back to the legislative record and I've read the comments of the legislators who passed those laws. They don't talk about the plant. They don't talk about anything except these out of control Mexicans who are coming across our border, and we've got to figure out some way to bring them under control.
At the end of my career, I found out the true benefits of cannabis, and it truly inspired me to become an investor first. And eventually I started my first company, Viola, which is named after my grandmother. And, because she was the person that I saw cannabis help, that really just, allowed my mind to transition to realizing that, cannabis was truly medicine.
Yahoo calls you a marijuana tycoon. They don't throw tycoon around people who don't have a great business. You know what I'm saying? They don't do that. But the fact that you're an African-American man, a former athlete, you know how that stigma can be sometimes when you walk into a meeting. Some of your executives are people of color as well. How important is it for you to kind of reintroduce people into this industry who are people of color so they can benefit as well? Is that something that you plan to do in Viola as well?
Yeah, it's very important, man. I mean, once again, that's one of my main missions. Is our purpose of our company is about, empowering, uplifting, educating people of color about the cannabis industry and ways to actually get into the space.
Earlier this year, Al and Viola partnered with Root and Rebound, a group committed to helping provide resources and education to incarcerated people who are re-entering society.
Yeah, so, with Root and Rebound, man, we're really focusing on reentry, right? So, being able to send newsletters to prisoners about, trying to help them figure out what they're going to do when they get out. Because a lot of people think that, like, guys go to serve their time, and like when they get home, like that apartment that they was living in 15 years ago is still there, right? And that car that they had and all this other stuff, and that's not the case, and it's about, being able to connect with different programs and stuff like that so that you can help your transition. And what we try to do is try to, have different programs that you have them and give them access to, and especially around the cannabis space, because I feel like, they have an expertise that a lot of these Wall Street guys and all that just don't have, and you look at a lot of these companies that have been run by a lot of these, type of leadership, they struggling. Right. You know what I'm saying? I think they struggle because they don't tap into the people that made the industry as relevant as it is. And, I feel like there's a ton of talent out of those 40,000 people that are still, like you said, incarcerated. And, if one thing I could do is find a way to be able to tap into that talent and give them opportunity in the space, I feel like I've done my job. So, that's what we're trying to do with Root and Rebound. Just trying to, once again, just trying to empower these people, man, because they went and served, real time for something that now billions of dollars are being made. Exactly. And then when they come home, you're still keeping them out of the space because they have felonies. Right. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't add up. So we're trying to change that.
And so now that it's evident that legal cannabis is here to stay, there's some extra effort that's going to need to be taken to make sure that they can overcome these obstacles and have their rightful role in this industry, which would not exist if there had not been Black and brown people willing to carry this plant through the darkness of prohibition. And basically, from my point of view, with 2 million Americans, disproportionately people of color, the largest proportion of any country, right? And we lock up more people in the United States than any other country in the world. This is, what Michelle Alexander called the new Jim Crow.
The COVID-19 pandemic has made what was once a matter of restorative justice now an urgent matter of life and death.
So, imagine if you're in a cell before COVID for cannabis charges and you're looking out and you're seeing people building intergenerational wealth doing the same thing that you are locked up for, right? And so there's, that's bad, right? But then you're locked up in a cell. You have no power to control who you're next to. You have no power to control the distance that you are from them. You have no control over the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat, and you know that the virus is in that prison, in the prison that you're locked in the cage, and it's getting closer to you every time a guard walks by your cell, right? It's as dire as you can imagine, right? There is no more dire situation. 70% of the prisoners in federal prisons that have been tested for COVID tested positive. The Cook County Jail and Rikers Island have currently the highest global population concentration of COVID patients in the world.
While some high-profile offenders like Paul Manafort and Tekashi 6ix9ine have been released during the coronavirus pandemic, the majority of those who are incarcerated for cannabis have been overlooked, even if what they're being convicted for is no longer a crime.
Right now, we're coming out every 3 days. We're coming out at 8 sales at a time every 3 days. They give us 3M masks. 3M, I believe Jay-Z or Meek Mill's donated the mask. We get new 3M masks once a week. Another thing they did, they come test our temperature once a week. They come every Monday and check our temperature. We've been on so many lockdowns for some of this violence that we never was out in the first place. That's kind of helped us in the long run because now nobody here has it. But this is the most time we have anything consistency in this prison. It's so tough and so violent that this is the most consistency we have with talking to our family and talking to our kids and even getting anything accomplished, even looking forward to just the 2 hours that you get out. Yeah, it's like waking up and you see the news and you see that during a big lockdown, the whole United States is on lockdown. And for people to be able to use an essential drug as marijuana, so that's how essential and that's how much it's needed. that kind of hurts. Like, dang, that's how much is needed, but yet I can't even have any freedom just to be back with my family or be with my kids or raise my kids.
For more information about how to support the release of those who have been incarcerated for cannabis convictions and support inmates during the coronavirus pandemic, please visit thelastprisonerproject.com.
Let's bring my dad home, please. Free Corvain Cooper.